Hi everyone, Mizzo here. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what public relations is. Just kind of a basic intro discussion, kind of contextualizing not only what it is, but then also, the study of it and why we're interested in it. So, and as many of this is not my first area of expertise by any means. And so to some extent, while I know more because I've been through graduate school, been exposed to some of these theories. I'm learning a lot in the study of this as well, and so I kind of wanted to start with the thing that hit me the most. So as I'm reading the material and I'm planning, the lectures and the material for this class, the line that hit me the most is public relations fosters mutually beneficial relationships. And that as we're about to talk, that there's multiple different definitions. We don't have one pinned down definitions and different perspectives of what public relations is. That really hit me, right? So this idea of fostering mutually beneficial, so not just relationships like a power top down, but mutually beneficial equitable relationships. And I think when you come to public relations, there's a tendency to get it confused or lump it in, right? So you've got advertising, marketing. Some people use those interchangeably, and that's not really quite accurate. And so, as a visual person, I think that those kind of get lumped together for me or get confused. And the more that you're studying this, public relations sort of starts to form a contextualization around some of these other things, right? So you've got advertising, which is specifically using a media. I'm finding the definition because I want to make sure I do it exactly correct. You've got advertising that is like the use of controlled media in an attempt to influence the actions of a targeted public, right? And then you've got marketing, right, which is that researching, crafting, refining to really promote a product, service, or whatnot. And then you've got public relations, which is the management of relationships between organization and its publics. So public relations certainly can involve advertising, right? Like certainly can involve marketing, but really focuses on that fostering mutual relationships. And so even though there are, again, multiple definitions, one of the things that everybody pretty much agrees on is the idea of a public. The public in public relations, which is a group of people, right, who share common interest, values in a particular situation. And my specific text notes that this is especially important if people are willing to act on those common interests or values. So the best way to conceptualize this is just think of publics, right? So I grew up in a church. I grew up in a Methodist church. That's a public, right? And that individual church is a public, and the larger Methodist system in Wisconsin that I grew up in is another public. And the larger Methodist national system that's connected to that is another public. My youth group inside the church was a public. And so not only are these specific examples of publics, but then think of how vast and different publics can be and how really it's just a group of people with shared interests and values. So my Girl Scout troop was a public. My family unit is a public. I used to go karaokeing at this bar called Miss Kitty's every Thursday night, and there was a group of us that went every Thursday night. That was a public, right? We had this shared interest, shared thing that we did. And so notice how that term is incredibly important in relationship to public relations, but it's also pretty common. I mean, I don't think I'm blowing your brains by explaining to you that a public is a group of people, right? And that that I'm pointing out that these specific groups that are really common and really aware in your life are publics, right? Now, when a public is connected to an organization, they use the term stakeholder. So that doesn't change the fact that it's still a public, but it does differentiate between, right? So like my Girl Scout troop wasn't connected to an organization other than we sold cookies, right? But there wasn't a lot of stake. Whereas my aunt just recently purchased with a group of people put money in to purchase a franchise for Rocky Rococo, and she's a stakeholder, right? So like her and the group of people that did this put money in, and that's connected to this organization in a financial way, right? So the concept of stakeholder. So I can't give you one definition of public relations, and honestly, in most fields of study, you're not going to find one common simple definition, right? Whether it's group communication or performance studies or rhetoric, right? You're going to have lots of different perspectives that come together and bring multiple definitions. But there are some sort of common themes or things that like people can point to and say, oh yes, this is involved in public relations. Yes, this is involved, or this is connected. So I'm just going to kind of go through them. So one is that public relations is a management function. Again, there's really that reference between about relationships, right? And specifically the organization and the public. It isn't just you follow orders or you do this, but there's a management or a relationship, which is definitely the concept of relational connection, right? Is obviously highly valued, highly involved in public relation. Public relations involves two-way communication. So my friend Jen is in the office next door, and if I were to just start talking to her like, hey Jen, I'm doing this video and you're going to be on it now, Jen, and I hope that's okay, Jen. I'm sending her messages, but she's not responding, and I don't even know if the messages are getting to her. That's not to, I can hear her responding. So as soon as she responds, now we've got two-way communication. But if I'm just sending messages to her, that doesn't count, right? Like that's not two-way, again, relational, committed, mutually beneficial communication. Public relations is a planned activity, and we're going to have a whole chapter, week or two about the plan and how important the plan is, right? Actions are taken on behalf of organizations, and so there's this necessity to be not just communicating, but organizing that communication into some functional step or action plan. Public relations is a research-based social science. So I'm going to unpack that really quick. So research-based, meaning that research is really important, or research is used to find information, build the plan, build the communication, right? Research is necessary. But then also I think the term social science, you should know what that is, right? So social science relies on scientific models and scientific thought, but also is really involved with humanities. So people, organizations, culture, sociology, that kind of thing. Natural science, right, is much more focused just on scientific methods. So if you think like biology, chemistry, right, less worried about the social and cultural context, just worried about the science, the scientific process. And then you've got fields like rhetoric or performance, which are not concerned with the social model. They're very concerned with the social model, not concerned with the scientific model, right? So not concerned with the scientific model and the scientific process. Quantitative is a word we often use there, but much more about people and performance and qualitative understanding, ethnography, that kind of thing. Social science is right somewhere in the middle, right? So very concerned about the scientific model, but also taking into consideration that cultural, social context, social science. And that's where PR falls, right? PR is a social science. And then finally, public relations is socially responsible. And this, a lot of modern textbooks are going to talk very specifically about values, and they're going to talk about how values are really associated with public relations. we're gonna hear throughout the semester a lot about the 4 steps and the 4-step model, the traditional 4-step model of public relation. And people use slightly different terms sometimes. My book uses the term research, planning, communication, evaluation. And it kind of references how, on some level, it used to be you do this first, so you do the research, you do the planning, you communicate, evaluate, right? And then the book kind of says, that's not real life, right? Like you start with some research and then maybe you make some plan, then maybe go back and do some research, and then you communicate a little bit, maybe that influences your research, and then you have to evaluate, and that often happens at the end, but sometimes once you evaluate, you go back and do more communication. Is my communication up here? Yeah. So those 4 steps are really important in that model of public relation. But remember, those are all happening on the platform of values, right? So if you think of those things happening in the background, values are surrounding it and influencing those steps. So that's some of the things I wanted to go over, and hopefully that helps give you a little bit more of a start for what public relations is and breaks down some of the reading for you. And yeah, Mizzo out. Have a beautiful day.